Hey everyone, we've got a major storm heading toward the United States over the next couple of days, and it's going to bring a lot of serious weather. We're talking about the continued risk of severe storms with damaging winds, large hail, and possible tornadoes. On top of that, a blizzard is set to hit parts of the Central Plains and Midwest. And if that's not enough, strong winds will sweep across most of the country with gusts between 40 and 60 mph, stretching from the Great Plains all the way to the East Coast. In today's forecast, I'll break down everything you need to know about this powerful storm and how it'll impact the U.S. over the next few days. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Let's start with what's happening right now. We've already seen some severe weather overnight in Oklahoma and Texas, mostly strong winds, and that system is now moving east. Later this afternoon, we're expecting even more dangerous weather, especially in the deep south. The severe weather risk today covers a huge area, and tomorrow. The East Coast will also see some intense conditions, so much so that the risk level has been upgraded. We'll get into those details in a bit. But the real story here is how intense this storm is going to get. Over the next 24 hours, it's expected to strengthen rapidly, with barometric pressure dropping to around 977 millibars overnight. That would make this one of the strongest low-pressure systems the U.S. has ever seen in March, breaking records across the Midwest. As this system intensifies, the risk for severe weather grows. Today, there's an enhanced risk of severe storms from northeast Texas along the Gulf Coast, including parts of Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alabama. The marginal risk has expanded, now reaching areas like Illinois, Georgia, and South Carolina. The biggest threats today, damaging winds, with some gusts could hit 80 mph in parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. And of course, there's a real tornado threat with the possibility of strong long-track tornadoes in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and southern Arkansas. We're also watching a separate cold core tornado setup in Missouri and eastern Kansas this afternoon, while the deep south continues to face a more persistent tornado risk throughout the day. If you're in any of these areas, make sure you have a plan and stay alert. Meanwhile, over in Texas and New Mexico, we're facing an extreme fire risk, the highest level possible. With dry air and strong winds, conditions are perfect for wildfires, so it's critical to avoid anything that could spark a fire. Tomorrow, the severe weather shift east. Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina are now under an enhanced risk, and the slight risk area stretches up toward Lake Erie and down into parts of Florida. The main concern tomorrow will be damaging winds, but there's also a chance for isolated tornadoes, and especially in the Carolinas and parts of Virginia. While the tornado threat tomorrow isn't as high as today, it's still worth taking seriously. We've got a 5 tornado risk in Virginia and the Carolinas, with the potential for brief tornadoes stretching from Jacksonville, Florida, all the way up to Pennsylvania. In terms of timing, this morning the tornado threat is fairly low due to limited instability. But after lunchtime, things start to pick up fast, especially in central and eastern Louisiana and southern Mississippi. That's when we could see a few tornadoes, possibly even a strong one. The most dangerous period today looks like it'll be between noon and 7 p.m., with the highest tornado risk happening between 3 and 6 p.m. in eastern Louisiana and southern Mississippi. If you're in these areas, stay weather aware and make sure you've got a way to receive alerts. Overnight, the tornado threat diminishes, but it ramps back up tomorrow morning in eastern North Carolina and parts of Virginia. By the afternoon, even areas like Pennsylvania and West Virginia could see an isolated tornado or two. By Thursday, this massive storm finally starts to move out, but not before leaving behind severe weather, high winds, and heavy snow. Speaking of snow, we're looking at blizzard conditions tonight in parts of Kansas, Iowa, and the upper Midwest. Strong winds combined with heavy snow will lead to whiteout conditions and dangerous travel. Most areas will see 2 to 5 inches of snow, but northern Wisconsin and the upper peninsula of Michigan could get as much as 6 to 12 inches. With those strong winds, blowing and drifting snow will make driving incredibly difficult. And about those winds, they're going to be intense. This afternoon, we're looking at gusts between 40 and 60 mph across Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, and the Dakotas. Even ahead of the storms in Arkansas and Louisiana, wind gusts could reach 50 mph. This kind of wind could lead to power outages, blowing dust, and even higher wildfire risk in the southern plains. Tomorrow, those strong winds spread into Missouri, Iowa, and the Ohio Valley. By Thursday, the winds start to calm down, but gusts of 30 to 40 MP will still affect parts of the Northeast and Ohio Valley. In terms of precipitation, the outlook is relatively straightforward. The West Coast is seeing above average precipitation. The central U.S. is drier than normal, and the eastern states are also experiencing more rainfall than usual. This pattern of wet coasts and a drier central corridor continues to play out in the 8 to 14-day outlook, which also shows an even more extreme warmth building in the eastern part of the country. This coincides with an intensifying negative pattern on the West Coast, driving more persistent warm air into the central and eastern regions of the U.S. At the same time, colder air remains entrenched in Alaska, stretching that cold influence up through northern North America. As we take a broader view of the season, the 3-4 week outlook released on February 28 reflects a lot of these same trends. March looks set to kick off with warmer than average conditions, particularly in the central and eastern states. This early warmth could potentially unlock a more active and severe weather pattern, bringing what feels more like April's severe weather impacts into March. Just temperatures remain significantly above average. We could see an early start to spring's more intense weather systems, including the potential for severe thunderstorms and tornadoes. Reflecting on how this past winter unfolded, the period from early December through the end of February was marked by some notable cold across parts of the U.S. The coldest conditions were seen in the Northwest and the Northern Plains, where temperatures dipped well below normal for an extended period. Meanwhile, the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, Ohio Valley, and Southeast also experienced cooler than average conditions overall. This past winter was likely one of the coldest we've had in the last decade. Even just a few degrees below normal over a 90-day period represents a significant departure from the seasonal norm. The Southwest, by contrast, stayed quite warm, which was a key factor in establishing the positive PNA pattern that dominated much of the season, pushing cold air into the central and eastern parts of the country. Looking ahead to current and upcoming weather systems, we're already seeing signs of increased activity. A developing low-pressure system in eastern Colorado is starting to spark thunderstorms across Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, and Louisiana. Snowfall is also building across the Rocky Mountains as this system takes shape. Overnight, this system will intensify, and by 4:00 a.m., severe weather risks increase with enhanced chances of strong storms across Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, and even parts of Iowa, Missouri, and Louisiana. As we move into Tuesday, March 4, this threat shifts eastward, spreading severe weather into East Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Iowa, Tennessee, Kentucky, and surrounding areas. Snowfall continues in the Rockies and starts extending into the plains and upper Midwest. By the overnight hours into early Wednesday, March 5, the severe weather activity advances into the Ohio Valley, affecting Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, and parts of the Southeast, including Georgia, Alabama, and the Carolinas. As Wednesday afternoon unfolds, the severe weather threat continues pushing toward the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast, bringing the potential for widespread storms. This severe weather event looks set to last for nearly 3 days, driven by an intense low-pressure system over Michigan, producing heavy snowfall in the upper Midwest and creating strong winds and intense storm activity. By Thursday, the system begins winding down, leaving a brief surge of colder air in its wake. However, another low-pressure system formed shortly after, bringing more Rocky Mountain snowfall and precipitation into the plains. This second system, though weaker, may still generate some thunderstorms and isolated severe weather as it tracks eastward. By the weekend of March 9, the weather models start diverging on their predictions, but there's some consensus around the potential for another major system. The GFS model suggests a more northern track, possibly bringing significant snowfall to areas like the Ohio Valley and the Mid-Atlantic, while the European model remains more conservative and colder. Regardless of the exact track, the system could bring heavy snow and strong winds, especially if it deepens rapidly near the East Coast. It's important to take these long-range projections with caution, as details are likely to shift in the coming days. As we move into mid-March, the pattern of alternating warm and cold spells continues. The cold front associated with the early March storms will temporarily cool temperatures, but warmth quickly rebounds by the 9th and 10th. Another cold front follows, keeping this back-and-forth temperature pattern in play. This variability sets the stage for more active weather, including the potential for further severe weather events around March 12-13, and another possible outbreak around March 15. These systems could bring strong thunderstorms and the potential for tornadoes, especially across the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and the Deep South. The long-range models show significant precipitation along both coasts, with the West Coast seeing particularly heavy rainfall and snowfall. The European model projects enormous snowfall totals in the west and decent snow coverage in the northern plains and parts of the Midwest. The GFS, on the other hand, hints at the possibility of a major snowstorm in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast, though this scenario remains uncertain. Temperature patterns in the coming weeks will continue this alternating trend. Warm air surges ahead of severe weather systems, followed by brief but intense cold spells. As we head deeper into March, this back-and-forth pattern remains a defining feature, suggesting continued active and potentially severe weather conditions. As for the immediate outlook, the Storm Prediction Center highlights significant severe weather potential over the next few days. Overnight storms on March 4 are expected to produce widespread severe weather across Texas and Oklahoma. By March 5, the severe threat expands into a large portion of the South, with an enhanced risk covering multiple states. On March 6th, the threat shifts eastward into the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast, with the potential for strong storms extending into parts of Canada. All of this points to an active and potentially dangerous weather pattern as March unfolds. With elevated tornado risks and the possibility of intense winter storms, it's crucial to stay informed and prepared. The coming weeks could bring both early spring warmth and severe weather impacts typically seen later in the season. We'll be keeping a close watch on how these systems develop, and updates will continue as the situation evolves. Thanks for watching. See you next one.